You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every
Thanks
day.
again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I am Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is Michael Katz from the Northeast Mississippi Tupelo Daily Journal. Got it right the first time that time. And that actually we can stop right there. I mean, I've pretty much done everything I can do. It's all downhill from there.
Nailed it.
So Michael, it's really interesting that I guess it was Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Maybe it was Wednesday that Ole Miss revealed their new Realtree 2.0 helmets, which, by the way, it looks fantastic. As a Navy person like me, there's very much of a feel of like deep water sailing and the sea foam coming up next to the boat. There's a whole lot of that in that helmet, so I love it. I love the fact that you can wear it with all three Ole Miss uniforms, so we have no idea at this point what it's even going to look like for the Oklahoma game. And I think Realtree just kind of knocked it out of the park on this one.
I mean, they're 2 for 2, right? They've done a pretty good job. I mean, it's interesting because like I'm a USC alum, right? So like I am not used to like alternate things. USC's had one helmet my entire life. They've had one jersey my entire life. So like it's always really cool to see what teams do. And Ole Miss has really embraced that. I know some people have problems with it, and they're traditionalists and they have thoughts on things like that. But I mean, honestly, it's what the players like, and players love all of these new things. And I know that fans, especially Realtree, is such an important company out here. That's going to sell a lot of merch again. I know it did last time. It's going to sell a lot of merch this time too.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And one thing that I talked to Michael Borky on Wednesday about, and I was like, Oregon does this thing to where they just put on any uniform. It doesn't have to have any connection to the school. As long as it looks good, they will wear it. And it'll be the Oregon uniform. It could be black and hot pink, but that's the Oregon Ducks that Saturday. Well, every uniform that Ole Miss has is rooted in some sense of tradition that you can directly point back to the school. And I think that's kind of a cool thing because they're doing the variety thing, but they're not doing the Florida thing, like where they're like, hey, we have really fancy, pretty uniforms, but we're going to go all black just because. They're not going to that gimmick at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's just some teams that you look at the combinations they roll out with, and you sort of just ask, like, why? This doesn't make sense. It has nothing to do with the school's colors. It has nothing to do with anything you think when you think of the program. So, I mean, Ole Miss has done a really good job of keeping it traditional, but at the same time, advancing it in a way that gets people excited. And I'll have to be honest, they're selling those jerseys and those hat prints and those shirts and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a win-win.
I think it's interesting that this Wake Forest game buyout thing is getting as much play as it's getting, because people don't realize that even Ole Miss has had short-term buyouts and teams that have bought out games and things. This happens fairly frequently. Now, Wake Forest is still kind of crappy for doing it, and I get that, but it's not this level.
Yeah, I think it's more of just like the way it was presented, right? Because it was a post-game press conference after a 40-6 drubbing, and then that just sort of gets slid in there, and we're all like, wait, did he just say that? And then we have to go get it confirmed. And then, of course, Lane had thoughts again on it Monday, and he's had thoughts on Twitter about it the last couple of days. I mean, I understand why Ole Miss is upset. It puts them in a bad spot. I mean, you've got very little time to schedule a game. And let's be honest, most Power 5, Power 4 teams already have their schedules done. The SEC regulation now is you need one non-conference Power 5 or major independent, or else you have to get a waiver. So they're put in a bind, but at the same time, like, I sort of understand why Wake Forest would do it. I mean, I know that they made the decision before last week's game, but we all saw what happened out there. Ole Miss didn't even play its best game, and that was an absolute throttling. I don't think they really want to have to go through that again. So I know it's $750,000. That's a lot of money to you and me and most people, but for athletic departments, especially Power 5 ones, that's pretty reasonable to get out of it. So I understand where they were coming from, but I can also understand why people at Ole Miss are pretty frustrated because, yeah, it puts them way behind the 8 ball with now less than a year before that whatever game's supposed to happen.
And do you want to hear my conspiracy theory at the moment?
Let's go for it.
Okay. So Billy Napier still has a job at the University of Florida right now.
Which is a shock.
Yes. He still has a job there. But for some reason on Feinbaum, every day Lane Kiffin to Florida gets brought up. And all these click-based news areas bring up Kiffin to Florida. And everybody's saying, well, Lane Kiffin needs to come out and deny this. No, Billy Napier still has a job. There's not a job to deny at this point. So I think Lane Kiffin used this to reassure his own fan base by saying, hey, I am really physically mad about having to schedule a game for Ole Miss in 2025 at the last moment to let kind of signal to everybody. It's kind of like he's denying that he's going without having to deny he's going. I mean, that's what it is, right?
Well, first of all, I don't know how Lane Kiffin's going to coach all these different teams. He has the Florida State job. He's got the Florida job. There's a lot of jobs that apparently he is going to fill. But listen, and he's been very he picks and chooses the things that he is passionate about, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has been extremely passionate and genuinely upset about this. That seems like a guy who. Obviously things can change and all that kind of stuff. That's a guy who's thinking about one thing right now, and that's about Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good sign of where he is and where things are.
Yeah, Ole Miss fans should hear that and what's going on and feel good. It doesn't matter what the noise of other fan bases are saying. They should hear that and give them reassurance of what's going on, because the noise is going to get up. Because let's just be real about this. If you need a head football coach, Lane Kiffin is going to be at the top of your list, and it doesn't matter which school, with the exception of maybe USC, but that's another point altogether. But if they're not, you're doing this wrong, because look what he's done at Ole Miss. So everybody thinks they're going to get their way, and everybody thinks their school is better, and that's just the tribalist nature of what college sports is. You can't overreact to hearing stuff like that.
That actually, back when Clay Helton got fired from USC, there was a small section of USC fandom that said, hey, Ole Miss was just going to the Sugar Bowl that year. People are saying, hey, what about bringing Lane back? He's all grown up. And I was like, I can't imagine anything that would be like just weirder than that situation. USC puts itself in a lot of bad spots. That would have been one to monitor.
They did that with Lane for the Tennessee job when they hired Josh Heupel, and then Lane got involved and started trolling on that situation. And so, yeah, there's a segment of the fan base that just likes that. It's almost like, I used to call it the Lane Kiffin effect, but now it's kind of like the Deion Sanders effect, to where there's just a group of people that likes the stuff that goes along with the fame and the notoriety and all the SEO clicks and all that. But yeah, it should be fantastic. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. When we come back, we are going to talk about Georgia Southern. This is the pre-game show. But right now, I do want to let you know, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts, for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. I want to welcome a new partner to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the College Corner, your one-stop shop for all things Ole Miss. Game day is just around the corner, and this week fans are rocking powder against Georgia Southern. So head on over to the College Corner and get your powder shirt or whatever outfit you need to get. Pick that up, that perfect game day gear. Whether you're gearing up for football, basketball, or baseball, College Corner has you covered. They're located off of Sisk Avenue, right next to the new Chick-fil-A. Getting to the store is a breeze, and there's plenty of parking. And for those of you out of state, no worries. Visit collegecornerstore.com, where they turn around orders lightning fast. Trust me, this isn't just a pitch. College Corner is where I get all of my Rebel gear. I ordered something on Wednesday to come in hopefully by Saturday, and there's a chance it could make it by Saturday because they get it out so quickly. So visit collegecornerstore.com or stop by College Corner today. So, Michael, turning the page to Georgia Southern. This is a game that I broke down all the week. I brought on the Locked On Sunbelt host, and he told me some stuff to know about that. And it feels like there are two really major mismatches that might be impossible for Georgia Southern to overcome. First of all, their run defense this year is atrocious. It's absolutely terrible. Ashton Jeanty rushed for 260 yards and 6 touchdowns, and he wasn't the only 100-yard rusher for Boise State that night. So they are giving up close to 250 yards on the ground. Ole Miss has not rushed for less than 250 yards in a game. This feels like a major mismatch. The other mismatch is, I think, Ole Miss's defensive line going against a G5 offensive line. I think that's going to be a problem. But when last week, where the focus was on the interior defensive line of J.J. Pegues and Walter Nolan and those guys, this Georgia Southern team is an air raid type team. So this is going to be a Princely and Monmy Ellen, Suntarine Perkins game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're ranked like 130 or 131st in rush defense of 134 eligible teams. I mean, it's bad. And Ashton Jeanty is a fantastic running back, but those are some video game numbers to give up.
He averaged 14 yards a carry.
Yeah, I mean, it was insane. But, like you said, I mean, this should be a game where Henry Parrish is already playing really, really well, and he's looked really good the last couple games. This should be a game where he looks really good again. And again, it's one of those games where you can probably impose your will early and sort of get this thing taken care of. At the same time, though, I do think it's interesting. Georgia Southern, like you said, they are an air raid team, and it's going to be a little bit different from what Ole Miss has seen. And their offense like statistics are bizarre because they can't run the ball. They run for like 300 yards total this year. The quarterback only has like 700 passing yards, but they average pretty decent point totals. It's like 36 or something. So they put points on the board, and so it's interesting to see how they do it. Clay Helton, he brought that air raid in at USC his last couple of years. He's kept that. They've been a frisky team the last couple of years. Lane has brought up, when they went to Nebraska and beat them a couple of years ago. They're a really quality team under Helton, and I do think that. If there's one thing that anybody has had questions about with this Ole Miss team, it's been the secondary against, really good passing teams. And last week it was pretty good against Bachmeier. And he was the best quarterback they had seen to this point. I do think that, honestly, Georgia Southern might have a better passing game, maybe not a better quarterback, but a better attack, if that makes sense. So I mean, again, you're about to get into the heart of the SEC schedule where the quarterbacks and passing games are about to get a lot better. Maybe not with Kentucky coming up in a couple of
or South Carolina.
Yeah, but eventually it'll get there eventually. But again, it's I think going to be another good thing to check off on where's the secondary at? How much better has it gotten? What needs to change? Because again, they're going to shut down the run. It's a team that already doesn't run the ball well, and Ole Miss has the best rush defense in the country. So you're going to make them one-dimensional. How do you handle it?
Yeah, I do want Georgia Southern to score a touchdown this game because it's becoming like a no-hitter in like the 7th inning to the point where you're thinking about it, and that could be problematic. I just go ahead and get that over with before SEC play. I just like, hey, maybe if this game's 52-10, I'm happy. If it's 52-3, I'm probably not. That's what's weird.
Yeah, no, it is one of those things where the longer it goes, I think the more it's going to get brought up because of people like me who write articles about it. And people like me,
I call myself a rat poison seller. I mean, that's what I do. So in a situation like that, I'm going to keep talking about it. It's like I've probably said 168-9 400 times on my shows this week.
Yeah, no, and again, it's impressive and it's a testament to what they've done. But at the same time, There's probably, would you like to never, give up a touchdown this season? Yeah, but let's be honest, that is not going to happen. And maybe the sooner it happens, the better, because let's be honest, they're probably going to win this weekend pretty handily. If it's 52-10 or 52-3, I don't think it's really that big of a difference.
Yeah, they're not going to matter. But the fan base, the difference between what you talk about, if those two things happen, that's two completely different things. And that means you're going into Kentucky, and all of a sudden, there's no touchdowns given up in 4 weeks, and I can imagine that's almost like self-rat poisoning yourself. If you were able to shut out or keep Georgia Southern from scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, I had help going through Ole Miss's archives the last couple of days and finding like ancient box scores, and I don't know how much further I'm going to have to go back if this goes to 4 or 5 games. I'm not sure if that technology, if I'm going to be able to get that far back.
Well, I'm going to break this off real simple for you. You're not going to have to go past 1959 because they didn't give up an offensive touchdown in 1959.
Okay, perfect. All right, problem solved.
It was like a fumble return, a punt return, and an interception return were the only points scored on Ole Miss that year.
We're set.
Yeah, so you don't worry. The research isn't going
Excellent. Love that.
Yeah. But we'll see exactly what happens. Me talking about that real quick, I'm going to go back to the uniform thing. And I had this conversation with Borky as well. I think one thing that Ole Miss needs to look at doing, if for some reason they get to be there undefeated into the Georgia game and the Georgia game becomes what everybody expects it to be, I think Ole Miss needs to wear the powder blue helmets with the numbers, the navy jersey, and the gray pants as a tribute to Johnny Vaught. Like the last time Ole Miss was in a game like that, that is exactly the uniform they wore. I think that would be an unbelievably cool tribute if they did something like that.
That would look pretty sleek. That'd be pretty solid.
Yeah. So I'm going to mount that campaign over the next couple of weeks.
Start it now.
Yeah. We are rolling with it. And I got a little bit of traction, but not much, but we're still in the early stages. So anyway, when we come back, we are going to continue and put the final touches on Georgia Southern in this pre-game show with Michael Katz of the Tupelo, Mississippi, Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. So stick around for that. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, and this is going to be a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, that's this weekend, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, current form of payment, and you can cancel it at any time, by the way. You can take Ole Miss at 34.5 points that they're favored against Georgia Southern, or their national championship odds have gotten a little bit better. They're kind of 12-1 right now, plus 1,200. Jackson Dart's Heisman's got good odds at the moment. It's 6-1, plus 600. Whatever your flavor is, you can bet it today. Just go to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michael, this is an interesting game. And I do expect Ole Miss to win this fairly handily. I do expect Austin Simmons to play the majority of the fourth quarter, or at least start the majority, to where he could play it. I think Walker might get in there as well. But this is also a game to where in 2016, Chad Kelly went down. Bad stuff can happen that can affect your season. So other than staying healthy in this game, what are you looking for today?
I think it goes back to how does the pass defense go against a team that is they know exactly what Georgia Southern is probably going to do. Can you stop it anyway? I think that's going to be big. I don't think there's any questions about most things on the offense and really most things on the defense. It's really the secondary, and Lane has talked about that. That's, not necessarily a weak link, but it's maybe one of the questions that people have had. Can you shore that up? Because, again, the run defense is going to be great. Your pass rush is good. Your guys are going to get there, especially in a game like this. Like you said earlier, Princely and Centurion and Chris Hardy and all these guys should feast on lower competition level tackles and linemen. I guess if there was one thing, I think you want to probably see, Jackson made one mistake last week, and it was a bad throw, and he admits it, and Lane admits that. I think you just want to see him go back to being the confident guy. You still want to see him taking his shots, but you want him to be smart about it. It's not like Jackson has to change anything. Again, he's putting up insane numbers. But you want to see him get back to being, aggressive, but the caretaker, because that throw was just, that's what we saw from Jackson in 2022, right? We didn't really see that from him much last year.
That was the Vanderbilt game. The Vanderbilt game was something we saw that.
Yes. And so, you want to see the guy that he is, you see him get back to that kind of thing. But I mean, other than that, like you said, stay healthy. The worst thing that can happen is you get a catastrophic injury in a game that you're probably going to win by 30.
You look at it, Jared Ivey is going to be out. He has a sprained ankle at the moment. His mom posted on Twitter that he's going to be all right, but that's obviously not a timetable, and he's not going to play in this game. Now, if you look at the depth chart, Suntarine Perkins is the backup at that position. I do not think Suntarine Perkins is going to take over full time and you go from a 280-pound end to a 210-pound end. I just don't think that they're going to do that. Is it a Chris Hardy type situation to where they're probably working to try and figure that out?
I would think so. Another thing that is interesting that might be something to look for is, again, in a game like this, when Suntarine is going to probably be playing even more, how do you make him factor in even more? Because again, he's a guy we've been talking about a lot, and he had a lot of offseason expectations, and he's I feel like
picking a sack against Wake.
Yes. I think that you want to see, especially if he's going to have more opportunities, you want to see him get that production. How is Pete Golding going to deploy him best? Sorry. But again, I think like a size discrepancy. But again, this is an air raid team, so I don't know if the size is really going to matter as much when you're going to want him to pin his ears back anyway. So it'll be interesting. I'm curious. I think this is a big game for him.
One thing that I guarantee that you're going to see is if Suntarine's in the game and he's playing consistently, you will see, even though they're an air raid team, them running some form of counter directly at him to make it stand up. Now, the key for Ole Miss is going to be, if Suntarine's going to play, you better have Chris Paul behind him. You better have something that can make up for some stuff behind him. But against this team, it's not going to matter. But as this season goes on, there's teams that might be able to take advantage of that. But maybe we need to see it to where he plays an extended period to see how he holds up against a Sunbelt G5 team to get ready, because with Kentucky and South Carolina on the schedule, they're going to see it and they're going to try and do it. And if Georgia Southern has success, they're going to do it early and they're going to do it often.
Yeah, and it's maybe he holds up better than we think in that situation, but I think you need to see it, and you need to see more of it. So I think this is a good opportunity to see what you have, because it's, the situations are about to get a lot more high leverage. You want to know what you have now.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Michael Katz from the Northeast Mississippi Tupelo Daily Journal. Michael, what do you got going on this weekend in Tupelo?
A little self-promotion here. I ran a story today looking at the aforementioned 1961 Ole Miss defense and comparing it. I got the old box scores, and let me tell you, box scores looked a little bit different back then. They are handwritten. It was wild. But looking at that, and obviously they are the first. This is the first Ole Miss team since '61 to not give up a touchdown through 3 games. So I just sort of looked at those teams, and football's changed a lot, but good defensive play is consistent. So it's really cool to sort of see the differences in how these teams played and how different offenses were. But I think that with context, comparison is important. So that was a really fun story to do. Was pretty stoked with that one. This weekend it's going to be a late one. That 6:45 start's kind of a bummer. I was hoping for something a little bit earlier, but we will survive. But it's crazy. Like after this, a third of the way through the regular season. It's just crazy how it goes by really, really fast. I feel like I was just in media days, and now here we are about to start SEC play. So it's about to get really fun.
Yeah, that story you did was like 7 BA just then. That's 7 years before Archie. That's what that was. Anyway, Michael, take care, have a good time, and we will talk to you next week, bud.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.